Good evening, everyone. The Mie Prefecture in Japan is known for a lot of ancient history and wonderful demographics within Japan. It's located just off the Kii Peninsula, not as far away from the Issei Bay, and is a massive tourist destination, home to Nagashima Spa Land, and hosts one of the holiest sites in Shinto, the traditional religion of Japan. But right now, it's also hosting one of an even bigger event. It is the ACC Race Nation here in Suzuka for the next round of the championship here at what is a fantastic track to be racing around. I'm Jack Merton, your commentator, as always for ACC Race Nation. We are, of course, at round 8. 3 races to go in this championship. Drivers are already underway on their qualifying laps, getting out there and trying to get some times on the board. And this is it now, realistically, in terms of championship hopes and dreams. If you want to make a move for the championship, this is the race you have to do it in. Otherwise, there's not going to be enough time left remaining for those other competitors that are out there. Now, we're following Stuart Packham at the moment, who's our championship leader. He is one of the protagonists leading the way. He's on 171 points in the season so far. He's had a number of podium places, but he's being hunted down by Josip Kosic, who's second on 163. Just 8 points separate those two. It is very close at the moment, and with 3 races to go, an 8-point swing could easily go one way or the other. But it's not just about those two, of course, because we've still got 14 minutes of qualifying left. And let's have a look at the drivers who are out on track. There is Josip, these two both together on the timing board. We've got Martin van Rijn in there. We've got Calci122, a new driver for this season. It's good to have him in his debut tonight for this season's championship. If you don't know who he is, it's Richard Gearman. He's a Dutch driver in the Ferrari 296, so he's got a nice red, white and blue livery going on there, representing his nation's flag. Let's see how he gets on. Rover Rakatamanga is also in. We've got number 87 back in the hunt tonight. If you don't know who that is, it's Ardy van Sloot. You've got Steve Hall, our reigning champion. He's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and keep hold of that championship. Nikola Gradan back tonight. Danny Zaltenbayer as well. We've got Miroslav Grasic, who's just gone 4th actually with that effort. Good effort from the Ferrari. Mark Chapman, he's out there as well. There's Dennis Penders. We've got Eden Peckman circulating. We've got Crow Nexus just coming down the main straight between turn 14 and 15. That's Tony Sokolov. Of course, Scott Clark in the pits. Tony Manley. John Wells, Simon Whiting, good to see him back in the championship. We haven't seen him for a while, to be honest. Daniel Danu as well, the man who's running in 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. He's going to need a little bit of luck tonight to try and drag himself back into the championship fight, if he can do. There is, of course, the number 75 of Joe Warner. I always get a little giggle out of his name, Froggles, as he goes through 130R. Ross Harris, the only Lamborghini still out there on circuit. Of course, one of the newer drivers into the championship, Rich Jarram. He was looking very quick. It was Rich during the practice session. He was in the top 3 And that's a lot higher than what we've seen from the Mustang man so far in his opening 3 races. So let's see how he gets on tonight. Let's see if he can put a good lap time on the board. Jordan Harding, he's in the pits at the moment. Linus Littrix, who we were following for quite a fair amount of time. And we go back round to Stuart Packham, and hopefully Stuart's about to go onto a flying lap. So let's watch him then. No, he's not going to do that. He's going to get out of the way. Let's go with Josip. He's got his foot planted to the floor. Let's see what the current pole sitter can do. He's going to head towards turns 1 and 2. Down through the gears for the BMW. 3rd gear. Down to 2nd to get the 2nd part of the corner turned in. He was a touch wide, but he's still matching his time. Then we're going to come into the S's. Really challenging set of corners. It's just a case of keeping the car consistently swinging between the left, the right, and keeping your momentum up. If you accelerate a little bit too much, it ruins your line for the rest of those sequences, but he's done well there. Clips the inside at Spoon, or rather at Dunlop curve, turn 7, completely flat in the M4, not an issue there. Into Degner 1, downshifts to 3rd and then upshifts to 4th. I'm assuming he'll go down to 2nd for Degner 2, he does indeed. Runs a little bit over the exit curve, but no issues there. Now he's got to spot his braking zone into turn 11 at the hairpin. Down to 1st for all of the GT3 cars tonight. Fires the car out quite nicely. He lost a little bit of time, but he's still within half a tenth of his lap so far. He comes around turn 12, long sweeping right-hander, and then into Spoon curve. Brakes just at that tarmac strip on the right-hand side. He runs a bit deep at Spoon, the first part of it. Second line's not too bad at all though, and uses all of the curb and Astro on the exit of turn 14. He's got a long blast now up towards 130R, one of the most intimidating corners in Grand Prix racing, and he just has a little lift in the M4. Over the curbs he goes, and then down through the gears into the Casio chicane. He's just got to get his braking zone right. He clips the curb on the inside and over to the left. He's not going to improve, I don't think. No, he's going to be just shy of it. But that is a BMW in sync with the circuit. So, really consistent efforts from Kosic. He is on form once again. Let's have a look at where everybody else is out on circuit. Tony Sokolov in 2nd place. Panning shot just there that comes across at turn 12. He's only 2 tenths off. Stuart Packham's 3rd. Half a tenth back. Daniel Danu's 4th. But only the top 4. Well, I say that. Only the top 5 are in within a second of the pole sitter. There is Stuart Packham actually coming round the final corner. He doesn't improve on his lap just yet. Mark Chapman just got himself into the 2nd row of the grid. We've got 8 minutes and 46 seconds remaining of this qualifying session. But Daniel Danu, the last of the top 5, within a second. Simon Whiting's not far away from breaking that 1 second gap, but then the rest of the field looks very, very close. Miroslav Grasic, he's 7. That's his best qualifying effort of the season so far. If he can stay there, I'm sure he'd love to. But we shall see. Big kick up of the dust going into Degner 1. Ardy van Sloot as well, putting in a very strong effort. Nicola Gradan in the pits. We've obviously, of course, got Richard Gearman. He's in the pits in the top 10. That's a good effort. Steve Hall, he's coming around the final corner here at turn 18. Can he make an improvement on his lap time in the Ferrari? Not currently. Jordan Harding, the first of the Fords. Martin Van Rienen is there. There's Rich Jarram too. Tony Manley's in 15th place. John Wells 16th. Adam Peckman, Dennis Penders, and Joe Warner is 11.5 seconds behind on his only valid lap so far. Still waiting to see efforts from Linus Littrix, from Rover Akatamanga, Danny Zoutenbayer and Scott Clark. So we'll wait to see how they get on. There's Martin. Martin had a very lonely race last week, did Martin, at Alton Park. He was on his own for the most of it. Martin, a few times I've watched Mr. Van Rienen, and he does seem to... He's a good driver. Absolutely brilliant driver, actually, to be honest with you. But the thing with Van Reenen is that he finds himself between a little bit of a rock and a hard place. That sometimes he's quicker than the group who are behind him, but not quite fast enough to reach the top set of drivers, such as your Packhams, your Kosic's, your Danus. He's just shy of that. But one thing that he has going for him, he's absolutely brilliantly consistent, and it's what you need in a championship like this. You really do have to have the speed to be able to not only maintain a good qualifying position, because, you know, Van Rienen's 14th at the moment, but you also need to keep hold of that consistency. And last few rounds, the Dutchman, he's been 8th and 9th in the last 2 races. You know, he had a 6th at the start of the season as well, back at Zolder. So he's clearly capable, and maybe one day we'll have one of those bizarre races that just play out quite nicely for him and he ends up getting a podium or something. It can happen. There's the new boy. What can the Dutch driver do? Shall we ride on board with him? Let's have a little ride on board with the Dutchman. So, just coming into turns 1 and 2. Trying to get a nice camera angle for us. Let's ride on board properly in the standard camp. Downshifting to 2nd in the Ferrari, interestingly enough. Keeps it in 3rd gear for the time being. I do like the helmet cam. Nice and consistent throttle application as he goes around Dunlop Curve. Coming down through into the Degners. It's a little bit wide. Get away with that. Nice and clean from him. That's what we like to see. Ardy van Sloot is in the cracking direction work from the cameraman there. But Ardy van Sloot in the top 10. Again, looking like his best qualifying of the season. There's less than 5 minutes to go, so that could all change. It really does need to change for Steve Hull, because he's 5th in the driver's standings at the moment. And whilst he definitely is our reigning champion, the odds are against him, really, at the moment, in hanging on to that championship double crown, so to speak, because he's 15 points off Kosic and he's 23 off Packham, so he's going to need to be much nearer the front if he wants to challenge. That's a nice line, but he gets the car rotated really nicely as well. He could get a little bit more time out of that final chicane. What's this going to be? It is an improvement. He's going to come towards the start finish line, which is just here for his lap. Moves him up 1 spot. That must be a sinking feeling, that. But I think there's more time to come from our reigning champion in that Ferrari. Nicola Gradan's still in the pits. Danny Zoutenbayer in the top 5. Great effort from the yellow Ferrari. Miroslav Grasic in the top 10 as well. There's Mark Chapman running very wide at 130R. He'll get away with that. Dennis Penders in 20th at the moment. Adam Petman in the pits. Tony Sokolov still in 2nd place. His best lap so far is a 2-minute .3. Let's return to the garage. We'll just see that Josip, it must be desperate to try and get into the 1-minute 59s. It'd be mightily impressive if he could achieve that. He almost runs into the back of his title rival. That wouldn't have been an ideal repair bill. And he has gone faster. I just said, can he get into the 159s? And Kosic has done it by 5 thousandths of a second. What a spectacular effort that is. And that is a gauntlet throwdown for everyone behind. That's the BMW driver saying, come and catch me, ladies and gentlemen. I am in form of my life. And he really has been. You know, in the out of the last 4 races, he's won 3 of them. You know, the Nordschleife excursion didn't go well for him, but that's the only negative result he's had in the last 4 rounds. And he is finding his feet in this championship. He's really taken the championship fight to our provisionally third place qualifier of Stuart Packham. Can Tony Sokolov respond? He's been quick this season. He's won a couple of races as well. Can the Croatian put a fly in the ointment? He's going to come towards the start-finish line here, which is just by this SMBC logo. No improvements. We've now got 6 drivers within a second of our pole sitter. Jordan Harding has gone up to 7th place as well. Let's see him cross the start-finish line, which he's about to do. Doesn't improve, but he's got another lap. He'll be on his final lap at this point. I think that's Ardy van Sloot coming towards the line. No improvement from him. Mark Chapman. No improvement either from him. What about Grasic? Yes! Up to 7th. Great effort for him. Into the pits comes Kosic, so that's him done. He's not going to improve any further. Tony Manley in the Aston Martin. Can he make any improvements? He's currently 17th place. And he goes up to 16th, so it's a small improvement. But that's what you like to see. Little improvements from time to time. I think it's Martin van Reenen who's just gone across the line. No improvement from him. And I think Simon Whiting has gone across the line too, but no improvement there. We've got 16 seconds to go. Daniel Danu's going to get another lap. And he'll be the last driver who will officially set a lap time. No improvement from the Spaniard. So, time's about to tick over. We'll watch Steve Hall. Oh, that might be a corner cut, you know. We shall see. He's carried on with his lap. He's got Dennis Penders just behind him too. Also in that Ferrari. But Hall needs a good lap here. And it's no improvement. So he's going to stay 13th as a maximum. Penders is in the pit lane. Next driver to come along will be Jordan Harding. So he's got his car and one of the Mustangs into the top 10. Clips the chicane at Casio Triangle around this final corner. And he dives into the pit. So that's not an improvement for him. Scott Clark. Will he get a lap? Ooh, that was a fascinating line from Scott there. Just about avoided the pit lane. Doesn't look like he's set a valid lap time. I think he's just gone into the pit. So it's Mark Chapman. He doesn't improve. He will stay where he is. Now I should be able to nip out of the pit lane here. Should be able to get ourselves over to Martin van Reenen. There he is. Oh, he was improving on his lap and he got it all wrong. No. Oh, at the final corner, he was half a second up as he went into the braking zone. Here's Simon Whiting. Now, this is better from Simon. He is improving on his lap. It's going to be about half a second. 4th place. Great effort. That's exactly what he needed. Daniel Danu, can he respond? He's also improving on his lap time, but will it be enough? Yes, just about. The Spaniard gets himself up into 4th position. So, at the end of the qualifying session, Josip Kosic, the man in form, the only driver in doing a sub 2-minute lap time. He'll be delighted with that. Tony Sokolov will line up on the front row with him, but 4/10 almost the gap to our race. Well, what will be our race leader and pole sitter. That's a big gap to try and close down. Stuart Packham is 3rd, 6/10 back. Then it's Daniel Danu and Simon Whiting, the 2 McLarens together in 4th and 5th place. Rounding out row 3, we've got Mark Chapman in 6th. We've got Danny Zoutenbayer in 7th. So 7 cars within a second of Kosic's best lap. And well done to Zoutenbayer, his best qualifying of the season. Same with Miroslav Grasic in 8th. Jordan Harden will line up in 9th place. Then there's a little bit of a time gap back to Ardy van Sloot. Great effort for him to get into the top 10 for the first time this season in qualifying. It's Nicola Gradan. Our debutant tonight for this season is Richard Gearman. He is lining up in 12th place on the 6th row. Reigning champion Steve Hall is in 13th alongside Rich Duram. You then have Martin van Reenen and Tony Mantley on row 8. Ross Harris and John Wells are on row 9. Eden Peckman and Dennis Penders are inside the top 20. We have a couple of cars who unfortunately we cannot scroll down to see, but I know that one of them is Scott Clark. Another one will be Rover Rakatamanga. There's one other car that I'm missing. I do apologise to that driver. Jordan Harden just commenting there saying that this is a tough circuit in the Mustang, and I can imagine it would be, but he's happy with qualifying. Whilst we're waiting for the race to start, let me just give you an overview of the championship standings. So, as I mentioned before, Stuart Packham leads the way on 171. 8 points back is Josip Kosic on 163, racing under a Swedish flag. Daniel Danu is third on 156. Jordan Harden is fourth on 153, with Steve Hall on 148. Sixth place, we've got Mark Chapman on 146. Tony Sokolov is 7th on 140. The Belgian Dennis Penders 8th on 123. 9th is Tom Creed, who isn't here tonight, on 117. John Wells still sits in the top 10 in his Mercedes on 115. Other drivers who are just outside of the top 10, you've got Ross Harris in 11th on 110. Martin van Reenen is 12th on 109. Tony Manley is 13th on 95. And then after that, you've got a bunch of other drivers such as Michael van der Waal, Rover Rakatamanga, Nicola Gradan, Simon Whiting, Eden Peckman, Neil Wright, Kevin McEntee, who haven't realistically had a full campaign, a full season, which is a great shame, because we like to see as many drivers doing a full championship. But we are getting ourselves ready. We've got a formation lap and then a 1 hour race ahead of us, and the race is due to start in the next 20 seconds. Okay, so the formation lap is underway. The drivers wheel spinning the tyres to get some heat into them as they set off from their grid slots. And we've got Kosic weaving away there at the front of the field. We've now got all of our timing tower available to us, which is absolutely what we're after. I would argue that Suzuka is a fantastic circuit. It's one of the original challenges of motor racing. It's still an old school circuit. For those that don't know too much about Suzuka, it was of course built in the 1960s, and it's effectively owned by Honda. Honda built it as a testing track, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of. But it hosts a whole range of different championships. Obviously, Formula One is what it's most notable for, you could argue. But it's also responsible for the Suzuka 8 Hours. If you don't know that, it's one of the biggest motorcycle endurance races. We've obviously had the Super GTs. Super Formula had their race last week around here at the weekend. It's even hosted NASCAR as well back in the day. Obviously the drivers now just in their mindset, trying to get themselves ready for this 1 hour event in front of us. We've got a mandatory pit stop, of course. Drivers are welcome to change tyres. Some drivers don't change tyres, they prefer to keep the same compound on for the hour race. Ooh, Simon Whiting almost running into the back of the McLaren of Danu there. There is our fly. Well, there is Kosic's potential fly in the ointment of Sokolov behind him. We know Sokolov is quick. He's had a couple of race victories, as I mentioned before, this season. But the driver's now approaching 130R at slower speed than what they will be in just under 2 minutes time. They're just weaving themselves ready. I've just noticed as well, I did spot this before, but just to mention that Miroslav Grasic is in the pit lane at the moment, so not quite sure what has gone on. Hopefully he can get back out on circuit. But let's cycle through the drivers just so that I can get to... There he is. Kosic, our man, at the front of the field. We'll cut to the external camera. Everyone's going to have to try and catch up here because we're getting ready for the start of this race, and half of the grid are just... Now the rest of the grid have just come through the final chicane, so they'll get lined up. And they won't drop the pedal just yet. They've got to wait until they get to the signal from the race control to say that they can do that. When they hit this line that's coming up in a moment, we will be racing here at Suzuka, and the race is live. It's a drive-through start for the number 33, and that's Richard Gearman on his debut, but Josip is going to hold on into turn 1. You've got a little bit further back in the pack, Martin van Reenen. You've got, of course, there's Gearman with his drive-through penalty. So far, so good. A little bit wide from Rich Duram in the background. Looks okay. Adam Peckman was on the grass, but we got away with it. Oh, that's Jaram off the road. He's going to get back on. Should be okay. Grasic is also restarted. Apart from a little nudge off the road for Rich Jaram, it looks like everything is... Looks like everything is okay for the time being as they come out of Degner 2. That's a nice panning shot for us. We can have a look at all the cars coming through as they approach turn 11 on the brakes into the chicane. And the reason why I'm following Richard Gearman is not because he's got the drive-through, but he's got the best vantage point for the spectator side cameras, so we can see the whole field really, which is quite nice. There's Rover Rakatamanga. There's the recovering Rich Jaram. A little bit further back there. Steve Hall right behind Nicola Gradan. So Steve has gone up 2 spots from his qualifying position. Danny Zoutenbayer, the sunshine yellow Ferrari, has had so far a nice opening lap, although having said that, that's very wide at 130R. And Grasic has got onto the back of the train, so maybe starting from the pit lane was quite beneficial for him. The end of the first lap. Let's just cut back to the garage here. You've got Kosic leading the way. He's nearly a second clear of Tony Sokolov. Then it's Stuart Packham. Daniel Danu's dropped a little bit back too. Simon Whiting putting the pressure on him there. Danny Zoutenbayer. Then it's Mark Chapman. Jordan Harding just about hanging on, but it's going to be a tough race for that Mustang. Then it's Ardy van Sloot, it's Nicola Gradan, as we have the worst cameraman in the world. There they go. Steve Hall. You've of course got Richard Gearman, you've got Martin van Reenen. Ross Harris is up to 14th, so that's a good start from him. Tony Manley in 15th, Dennis Penders is there as well, so Dennis was looking at 20th place in qualifying. It's gone well for him. John Wells is there. Adam Peckman. Joe Warner's got pressure from Linus all over the... Well, I say pressure from him. He's actually behind him, so that update is now corrected. Miroslav Grasic, Rover Rakatamanga, who's dropped back a little bit, Rich Duram, and Scott Clark, who's got damage to the back of his car. So we'll have to find out what's happened to Scott. But at the front of the race, look how hard Sokolov is pushing already. Sokolov really trying to hang on to the back of the BMW, because he knows if he gets away, that's it. Kosic can drive up the road and be done with this race if need be. He's got that in his locker. We saw that at Spa. He can easily put a nice shift together and pull away from everybody. But there is certainly coming on to our third lap of the race, realistically, so still a long way to go, and it's all about tyre management. Tyre management around here is going to be critical as well, because there's a lot of long sweeping corners, and GT3 cars are not the biggest fans of long sweeping corners when it comes to tyre wear. The tyres around here do get quite a bit of a punishment, because it's an awkward track. Because of the pressures that you're running in these cars. And that is Gearman, who's just cleared his penalty, so he'll get back out there, out on circuit. He's not too far away from the pack. He's not lost as much time as I thought there, so let's see how he recovers through the rest of the race. I think Dennis Penders went off the road then. There was a yellow flag, but I think it's cleared, so he might have just skipped over the gravel. It's Tony Manley. It's on the back of Ross Harris and Van Reenen. And there are already gaps appearing in the race so far. We're only 3 laps in, but Suzuka is a real test of driver ability. And it's already starting to separate out a little bit. If we have a look into our positions here, if we just have a look where the drivers are out on circuit. So, you know, Sokolov already over a second behind now. Oh, having said that though, Kosic got the line wrong through 130R. And the Swede lives to fight another day, but that was awkward. You can see that gap has come right down. Thanks to that mistake. We wouldn't have lost too much time, but it's just enough to give the Croatian a little bit of a motivation to try and catch the race leader. 1.1 second, didn't lose as much as I thought actually. Now there's Stuart Packham, so Packham 1.7 behind already at this point in the race. Danu 4th, over a second back, and then there's a group of cars, which includes Mark Chapman in 7th place. Danny Zoutenbayer has got past Mark Chapman actually. He's doing a great job. I'm really impressed with Zoutenbayer since he came into the championship. He's been quietly going about his business, and he's in the top 6 at the moment. Admittedly, we are only just about breaking into the 7 minutes spawned of this race, but hey ho, he's still right there. And in fact, I think Stuart Packham's just had a little bit of a moment, because this group is now a quintet. No, as I say that, the next split point, Mark Chapman's over a second back. There's Jordan Harding, there's Ardy van Sloot, Nicola Gradan's just a little bit further back. He's got Steve Hall with him, and I think Steve Hall wants to get past. He might be looking a little bit quicker than the 10th place driver in front of him. Then it's a gap back to Martin van Reenen, who's dropped Ross Harris, but he hasn't dropped Tony Manley in turn. John Wells is on his own. Miroslav up to 16th from the back of the grid, so great drive this so far, but he's 5.5 seconds behind John Wells. You can only just about see the Mercedes when he comes out of Spoon Curve, although to be fair, Grasic did get that a little bit wrong. He did understeer there. but Linus Littrix is nowhere near close enough to the back of the Bosnian. Edin Peckman there too, so this is a nice little group that are looking to fight together. I thought Linus was going to look at a lunge up the inside. Massive bump over the curbs there at the chicane, but no damage done, I don't think. Rakitamanga, Dennis Penders, Rich Jarram, Joe Warner, and then the recover. Oh, I say that. I was about to say the recovering Richard Gearman, but it was actually the recovering Joe Warner, and round, I think, goes the Dutchman, yet past the McLaren. He moves himself up into 22nd place at the expense of the McLaren driver, and there is Scott Clark, who's back out on circuit. Back at the front though, oh, Mark Chapman is no longer in that group. There's Danny Zoutenbayer, then it's Jordan Harding, and if I'm right in saying, yeah, there it is in the background, the Dayglow green Ferrari is down to 9th. I wonder if he's had a little excursion off the track. Danny under pressure. Yeah, very much under the pressure from his fellow McLaren stablemate. I'm also keeping an eye on the gap at the front because Sokolov is only half a second behind Kosic at the moment. But will Simon Whiting look to make a move? Not going to make a move at 130R, and runs very deep, and that's going to stop him having an opportunity at attacking Danu into the Casio chicane. Nice line that though from the British driver, but he doesn't get the same exit that the Spaniard who we ride on board with has, and Danu will live to fight another day and will stay in front for the time being. But there's increasing pressure on that matte green McLaren. Measure of consistency he's going to have to be. Ross Harris is in 13th place. Rich Jarram on the back of Dennis Penders. That Mustang is very quick in a straight line, but I don't think that Mustang is quite fast enough to overhaul the Ferrari in front of him. And there's Hardin. He's looking like he's going to be in for a lonely race, I think. But there's still a long way to go. Back at the front, we ride on board with Kosic. Nice clear path in front of him, but if we just skip back, there is Sokolov, the Croatian, who has just slipped back to being a second outside of the margin that he had before. He was only half a second behind the race leader, but that's now dropped away from him. Not ideal for the Ferrari driver. Every time I seem to follow Kosic, he does fine, but as soon as we cut away, just to make a little tiny error of some form, which brings the Croatian back into play. Now, this is a developing situation. This can still all change. We are only 13 minutes into this race, almost, and it's still the race lead for the number 9. There's Van Reenen. And we have Richard Gearman running in 21st place. So I think Rich Jarram's had a little issue somewhere. Oh, that's John Wells off the road. And I think we have another car off the road as well. I think I'm right in saying, I think it's Edin Peckman who's gone off the track at 130R. So I saw that now these two were together on circuit. John Wells and Edin Peckman. Edin's carried on, and Wells has carried on too. Just looking at the side of the big block Mercedes, but there's no damage, so he carries on. Eden Peckman's Ferrari equally looks fine. I wonder if they've had a big wobble and maybe just gone through the gravel trap. It's very hard to see any damage on the cars. This group's still together for 4th place. They're only a second behind Packham, to be fair. There's Harding on his own. Mark Chapman now trying the recovery drive if he can catch up to them. Nicola Gradan still has Steve Hall all over his rear spoiler. And I think Steve's going to get a bit tired of seeing this blue Ferrari in front. So he runs a little bit wide at spoon 1. Does Steve Hall. And Ardy van Sloot's gone backwards as well. He's down to 15th now. I've got to say, Miroslav Krasic is having a great drive. You know, 15 minutes ago he was in 24th place. He's up 10 places, and the Bosnian is having an absolute field day out there. He's really putting the hammer down and making hay while the sun shines. Can he catch up to the rest of the field now? That's the next question. He's 7.5 seconds behind, but the cars in front of him, you know, he qualified inside the top 10, so his speed is there. So can he close that gap down? Can he make any impression on Tony Manley in front of him? We shall wait and see. Riding on board with Hall. He's all over the back of the rear diffuser of his fellow 296 Ferrari stablemate, but you can see he's so much quicker than Gradan. But the Croatian is more than able to hold his ground, and he's on a bit of a high at the moment as well as Gradan, because the last race that he did, he didn't race at Alton Park unfortunately, but the race before that, for those that didn't catch it, for round number 7 of the championship, that was Alton Park, and around 6 at Spa he finished 6th. So Gradan knows how to pull a result out of his pocket when he needs to, and he will also know how to defend his place. And it's going to take a little mistake, and that is as close as Steve has got so far. Can he get on the power? Oh, he can't. Gradan had a little moment where he had a wiggle, and then Hall had a wiggle, and that was that really. It's just equalised the gap out again. Into 130R. Gradan's Ferrari looks really loose at the rear of the car. It's bouncing all over the shop in the faster corners. Ooh, a little bit of oversteer from Hall as he came out of the Casio chicane. He has got a little bit of damage as Gradan. I think he's been rear-ended during the early stages of this race, but it doesn't seem to be afflicting him at the moment. Danny's out and by. This is a big fight. So Simon Whiting has been all over the back of Danny for the last few laps. We're going to ride on board with the Dutchman. He's got a really nice run through Spoon Kev. He's surely not. He's going to look at the inside. I thought he was going to look at the inside of Degner, but Simon goes off the road. And he's going to try and lunge up the inside of Zoutenbayer, but he can't quite make it. And the Dutchman is now the one applying the pressure to Whiting. And that's such a brilliant run out of the left-hander there at Dunlop. I keep calling it Spoon. I do apologise. It is Dunlop corner at turn 7. I do know that. But he had a great run. And that little look to the inside just threw Whiting off balance a little bit, and he went off the road. Very lucky to get away with that. But all of that pressure from Zoutenbayer is just giving a breather for Danu. He's got a second to the cars in front of him for the time being. It's a really good showing so far from the day. I was going to say the Dayglow Ferrari, but I've called it dubbed it the Sunshine Yellow Ferrari. He's doing a very good job. Just a little bit further back from this group, the Mark Chapman in 8th place currently. He's closing the gap to Jordan Harding. Oh, a little bit wide from the McLaren in front of us, but a beautiful line into turn 2 as a result. So Whiting pushing the extremities, but seems to be dealing with that very nicely. Steve Hall in the pit. So I said before that Steve Hall was getting stuck behind Nicola Gradan. He's made an early pit stop to try and undercut him and get out into some clean air. It's not a surprise that he's done that. I said that Mark Chapman was closing the gap on Jordan Harding. There he is. Less than a second behind the Mustang. But the next question remains now is, yes, Chapman has caught up to the back of the Mustang. Can he overtake him? Because as I've discussed several times this season, the Mustang is ferociously quick in a straight line. It's not going to be easy. Well, that's a very deep into turn 11 from Chapman, but no issues there. No harm done. But we know the Ferrari's no slouch, don't get me wrong. It's still a quick car, but the Mustang is by and large the fastest GT3 car in a straight line. But it's down to the neon Dayglow green Ferrari to get past the orange Mustang. We shall see. Nice big pack here, fighting over what looks to be the race direction today is absolutely dreadful. Fighting over 15th place. There's Chom Wells trying to look at the inside of Linus Littrix. We're on board of Dennis Penders. Look at the Mercedes is all over the rear spoiler of the M4 in front of us. On the inside line for Spoon 1. Little nudge, little bit of contact. And that was always going to be an incident. Round goes Linus Littrix. And I think Penders is going to end up in the steward's room for that one. He saw a gap, he went for it, but Littrix came across, rightfully so, for his back to his racing line. Didn't see the Belgian flying in. And that is Linus all the way down in 20th place now. Richard Gearman's also, it's very off the road from Penders there. Cut to the external shot. Doesn't look as if Gearman is close enough to make an overtake, but yeah, I don't think Linus will be too impressed about what's just happened. Simon Whiting in the pits as well. So Simon Whiting, another one who felt like he was getting held up by Danu. He's now decided to go for an undercut. I'm just looking at where Steve Hall is on track. He's on his own comfortably. So when Simon comes out, he's going to have a nice gap to feed into. In fact, he's just coming round turn 1 now is Simon. And he's got Scott Clark in front of him, who will be a back marker, so he'll get out the way. Next driver in front of him, though, will be this man. So he's got 14 seconds in front of the McLaren of Simon Whiting, who has just gone past Linus Littrix, who might have damage, actually. Actually, no, Linus has just gone off the road. Now, currently at the moment, we've got Tony Sokolov in the lead of the race. Now, this is due to the fact that I'm fairly certain that Kosic has gone into the pits. I did not cover it when we were talking before, but there he is at the moment in 10th place. He hasn't. It's not come up on the track map, ladies and gentlemen, but Josip Kosic has got damage. He's gone off the road. We've not seen it on track. We've been following the other little fights around the course, but Tony Sokolov leads the race, and what was looking like a canter at the front has suddenly turned into a disaster. The man in second in the championship is going to get overtaken by Tony Manley into turn 2. That damage on that BMW is not sustainable. He's going to have to go into the pits. That must have just happened. It's a shame we've missed it, but the Swede is all the way down in, well, 9th place at the moment, but he's got drivers behind him who've pitted, so nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I assumed he'd pitted, but that's definitely not the case. And to be honest with you, I could beat myself up for saying that I thought he'd pitted, because I hadn't seen anyone going into the pit, so that's all on me. But the Croatian leads the way. He's got a healthy advantage to Stuart Packham in 2nd place, who will be no doubt happy to finish 2nd if results stay as they are. Simon Whiting, the first of the drivers who have pitted so far in this Grand Prix. I say Grand Prix, I like to say that word from time to time. Daniel Danu's still in front of Danny Zoutenbayer. We are 35 minutes and 56 seconds remaining of this race. We've seen a few pit stops already. Simon Whiting is the one that we're keeping a close eye on, because he's directly involved in this podium fight. So these guys carry on for another lap. Ross Harris is in this little group of cars, which involves the recovering Kosic, who's just gone flying off the road at 130R. I think that BMW is going to have to come in the pits. He's struggling to hang on to the cars in front of him. And yet he doesn't. He carries on. As we follow Harris into turn 2, closing the gap up to the M4 in front of us here. But still, a Lamborghini has moved up through the field today. He's put in a very good shift. And now he's got Van Reenen just in front of him, who I said before normally has quiet races, but this is shaping out to be quite a fascinating fight for a spot in the top 10. Well, I say a spot in the top 10 because we've got a few cars who have already pitted. Rich Jarram, he's made a pit stop as well. Jordan Harding still has Mark Chapman on his rear spoiler. You can see that Dayglow green Ferrari behind us on the screen. Oh, Chapman really running up to the back of Harding through turns spoons 1 and 2. Puts the power down nice and early, does Chappers, but he just can't close the gap. You can see the Mustang's just able to stretch the legs a little bit more. And Jordan Harding's no slouch. He knows exactly how to defend and where to do it. But that's a nice line from Chappers. He's going to have a really good opportunity here, but the power of the Mustang had a really nice drive coming out of the final corner, and his advantage that Chapman had on the exit of the corner is nullified. Jordan knowing exactly where to place the car. That is a drive-through for, I want to say that, I said 136. But I don't believe that's correct. I think it's 139, which is Nicola Gradan. Yeah, it is. So he's got a drive-through penalty for track limits. Well, that is unfortunate, because he has come out quite a long way out behind Steve, who pitted earlier, by the way. He was stuck behind Nicola Gradan for quite a while. Steve now off and up the road. Jordan Harding still hanging on. Not far away from half distance here at Suzuka. Stuart Packham in the pits. Rover Rakitamanga and Miroslav Grasic and Eden Peckerman. Out of the pit lane goes the BMW. And Steve Hall has got past Stuart Packham. As has Simon Whiting. By a long margin. Now, did Packham have damage? That's the only thing that I can think of, because he's 24 seconds behind the McLaren and Simon Whiting. So did Packham have damage? Well, if he did, it's cost him a lot of time. And he's behind Steve Hall now. Nicola Gradan has just picked up another penalty for stop-go now. And the race seemingly going from bad to worse for him. Yeah, Packham's definitely had some damage, because he's got Miroslav Grasic right behind him, and that's not where those two should be together on circuit. So I said earlier, before the race started, I was saying that drivers, you know, the pressure's on them. You know, and when the pressure disappears a little bit, that's when drivers can make mistakes, just as much as when the heat's on. And for Packham, he's dropped down the order. He can still shake out a completely different way. He's still got half an hour of this race remaining, but Kosic will be quite pleased with that. And he's in the pit lane now. So Daniel Danu's in there, Mark Chapman's in there. So Chappers has pitted to undercut Jordan Harding. That's what he's planning on doing. Out goes the Ferrari. Out goes the McLaren. And I think Chapman will be happy to be so close to the back of Danu there, because he's gained some time during the pit stops. Martin van Reenen then moves himself into 4th place. There's our first appearance of the season for Richard Gearman. Not to be confused with Richard Gere. But the Ferrari having a very solid run out there in 9th position. There's a race director just telling us we're halfway through this race so far. Rover Rakatamanga, he's had a quiet one so far as the Frenchman. But again, it's all going to start to shuffle out now. Ardy van Sloot running into 7th. Steve Hall's only 8 seconds behind Mark Chapman. So doing that massive undercut has helped our reigning champion. However, he's still quite a long way away. And Simon Whiting has jumped Daniel Danu as well in the pit stop. So let's just have a look at the drivers out there. We've got Tony Sokolov still leading the way in that Ferrari. We've then got Jordan Harding. Danny Zoutenbayer has just come into the pits. As I was just saying, so it's Tony Sokolov leading the way, it's Jordan Harding in 2nd, Tony Manley is 3rd. Great to see Tony Manley high up in this race. Ross Harris is up there in 4th. Ross is finally having a race without any incidents so far. Let's cross our fingers for him. Ardy van Sleet is 5th, John Wells is in 6th place, but he's also not made a pit stop, nor has our 7th place driver Richard Gearman. Now, where will Danny Zoutenbayer come out in relation to Simon Whiting? He's behind him. So Simon Whiting will move into what is a net 2nd place in this race. Zoutenbayer will be in 9th. Nicola Gradan is a lap down. That's who you can see there. Daniel Danu is 10th. So Danu's stint clearly wasn't as fast as those that have undercut him, or overcut him in this sense, with Danny Zoutenbayer. So he's going to drop down the order. Mark Chapman's only 1.5 seconds behind him as well. There's Van Reenen. Then it's Steve Hall. Actually, that's incorrect. That's going to be Steve Hall in 12th place. Yeah, and then it'll be Martin Van Reenen in 13th. He's got Stuart Packham in 14th place. Then it's Miroslav Grasic, and then it's Josip. So both of our championship protagonists have been in the wars. And I said before, this is the round, it's round 8 of the championship. This is the race where if anyone else wants to have a championship challenge here, they've got to do well, they've got to score some good points. And the problem that we're having at the minute, as our 2 race leaders have bolted into the pits is that Danny's dropped down the field. He's probably going to be in 4th place. He'll outscore the two, but will that be enough to bring him right back into the championship fight? Remains to be seen. It'd still happen, though. It really could. It's getting exciting. Ross Harris leads, then. He's not pitted. Nor is Ardy van Sloot. John Wells, he carries on, as does Richard Gearman. So we've only got 4 drivers now who are yet to make a pit stop. Sokolov is now coming out of the pits. He's going to have a nice buffer to Simon Whiting, who is just there. I say it's a nice buffer, actually. It really isn't. Let's just get onto the track map here. Let's just try and cut through to Sokolov, because he's only 2 seconds in front of Simon Whiting. So Simon Whiting, who I would have loved to have seen him had a full season, for various reasons he's been unable to do so. But Simon Whiting, after pitting early, is on an absolute mission to go and get a race victory that he's not had since last season. Of 1.8 seconds. This is on. This is absolutely on for the race victory tonight. 25 minutes remaining. We've got a potential grandstand finish in front of us. Danny Zoutenbayer will be up to 3rd. Could be on for his first ever podium with ACC Race Nation. What a drive from the sunshine yellow Ferrari. We've still got to wait for all the order to try and shake out a little bit, because we've still got 4 drivers in front of Sokolov who are yet to pit. And Ross Harris is one of those who has just carried on again. There's Manley, there's John Wells. So John Wells and Richard Gearman, these two here just coming into the Casio chicane, are they going to stop or are they going to carry on? They're going to carry on for another lap, I think. Someone's just dived into the pits there, but I didn't quite catch who it was. It wasn't, of course, Richard Gearman. There is Simon Whiting. What's the gap at the moment? 2.2 seconds. Now, it does say he was 8 seconds faster, but that's because of the pit lane time as well. That's why he's lost that. But this is all to play for. I've got to say, I just want to make a point here that on the last lap, so it was a 2:15 from Simon Whiting, Danny Zoutenbayer, this is probably the quickest way of doing this, unfortunately, because of the way that the lobby works, was quicker. Surely not. And I'm saying surely not, because is the Dutchman going to drag himself up to the back of the race leader and the man in 2nd place? I mean, I love an underdog, ladies and gentlemen. I've always loved an underdog story. It's something that I feel very strongly about. But this would be an unbelievable shock if he got up to the back of the leading duo. That's a tall order with 23 minutes to go, and he's 5 seconds off the back. But this is a great drive so far. What a performance. Now, there's a nice little fight going on here for 12th place. Martin van Rienen's got Miroslav Grasic between himself and Stuart Packham, so it's gone from bad to worse for Stuart. It looks like he's only going to finish 1 place in front of Kosic. And this just keeps the door open for the championship fight. That's what it does. How does it feel to be in a Bavarian sandwich, Grasic? Because that's where you're at right now. Packham looking to the inside at Spoonie, thinks better of it, and sure enough, Grasic breaks a little bit later. All together, these three. Packham really pushing the car hard. But they are all covered by what is effectively a tea towel gap. There's Grasic flicking the curb into 130. Oh, he's got it wrong. He's going to slide. He held it. Great car control from Grasic. I thought the Bosnian was flying off the circuit and into the scene of the accident, but he survived. It's let Packham through. We've got a couple of drivers now into the pit lane, and I think Ross Harris is one of those. Our race leaders. Looks like everybody has now made their pit stop. But Ross Harris is going to emerge in front of this group, so pitting later than everybody has brought Ross Harris into the top 10, but he's got cold tyres, he's gone off the road. Can Martin van Reenen go past him? Oh, he's turned him round. That's such a shame. Ross Harris genuinely cannot buy any luck. That was such an avoidable accident as well. Oh, and he's just come out on cold tyres. He's going to be furious, is the Lamborghini driver. He just cannot get a break of luck. It's kind of like John Wells earlier this season. He just seemed to have an incident on lap 1 every single race, but it just seems to be for Ross Harris. He gets an incident every single time he's on track. I was just about to praise him for being in the top 10. Hopefully, fingers crossed for Harris, it's not too much damage, but that's the least of his worries, really. We've got Grasic putting the pressure onto Stuart Packham. This has been one of the drives of the day as well, because, as I said before, he started in 24th place. He's up to 9th. What a drive. What a drive from the Bosnian. Mark Chapman's up to 5th. He's got the pressure on the front of Daniel Danu, but he cut out. He just clipped the outside grass there, and there's a little divot in the grass. Clearly, just upset the Ferrari. But he's got a McLaren in front of him now, not a Mustang. That's going to be a little bit more even when it comes to the straight line speed fight. There's Dennis Penders. We haven't seen much of Dennis today. Big slide out of Degner too. But he's doing okay. For those that don't know, by the way, about Degner, because I know a lot of corners in Japanese racetracks are typically either named after advertisers or after local names. Degner is not named after a local. It's actually named after an amazing motorcycle racer called Ernst Degner. The reason why it was named after him is because he had a massive accident there at Suzuka's first ever bike race. But Degner himself, he actually went off and won a Grand Prix championship back in the 1960s. He was a phenomenal bike rider. Even took part in the Isle of Man TT as well. So the man was certainly not afraid, and he made his impression on this track. So 60 years later, the corner still bears his name. Having a look at the comments as well. Mikey's just commented to say Jordan Harding fan club here. Well, if you're wondering where Jordan Harding is at the moment as part of the fan club with your little scarves, he is in 6th place. He's had a good race despite the Mustang not being well equipped to this circuit. And he's had, as usual, another one of his typical races that he does. He just stays out of trouble. And I think that's Scott Clark who's just gone off at the S's he has. He's got back on circuit. Now Danu, you can see that little red triangle because that was showing you how close Mark Chapman was to the back of the Spaniard. And I said, can I just make a point as well? I said before that Danny Zoutenbayer was catching the leaders. He is absolutely catching the leaders. He's lapping at the same speed as Sokolov. He's almost on the back of Simon Whiting. So we might not have a race for the race victory, but we may certainly have one for 2nd position. And it's really, if Zoutenbayer does genuinely get up into 2nd place, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be hard for me to pick a driver of the day between him and Grasic. Danu's doing a good job. There's a yellow flag. Oh, that's Joe Warner who's gone off the road. That's an awkward place, but well done, Joe. Gets right out of the way. And that's the development of Joe Warner so far, ladies and gentlemen. You know, he's only had a couple of races in the championship, and he's not the fastest, and that's not a criticism of him. He's getting up to speed with these really talented individuals who are out there pounding the tarmac, and he's just learning his racecraft, and that was good from him. He got right out of the way, so well done, Joe. Give him some praise for that. There's the recovering Ross Harris. Just looking to see how the damage is on that Lamborghini. I just want to cut to the passenger side of the car, but unfortunately he's going through left-hand turn, so we can only see the right-hand side of the car, and there we go, we can only see the right-hand side of the car. He got turned around, sadly, after his pit stop. Doesn't look too bad. I mean, he's still going to be on for a 12th place finish as it stands, but the truth of the matter is that Ross was realistically on for his best result since Zolder. You know, would have been a really nice to see him up there. Oh, Rich Jarram having a big twitch there through Spoon. I'm not sure what's happened to Rich actually in this race, because in practice he looked really fast. He was in the top 3, setting some good times, but I don't know if everyone's just got quicker than him, or he's made a tweak to his setup and it's not quite worked out, but he's in the top 20. But I was expecting a little bit more, dare I say. Got to be careful of cutting the chicane at Casio there, because you can pick up a time penalty. We've got nearly a quarter of the race remaining. Let's have a cycle through of the drivers. Danny Zoutenbayer's up to second. He's gone past Simon Whiting on the main straight. So Danny Zoutenbayer, I said if he gets into the top 2, he could be on for driver of the day. He really is absolutely flying. Thank you, Mikey. Appreciate the comments, mate. 4.6 seconds behind Sokolov. I mean, with 15 minutes to go, even if you were lapping half a second faster, it would take you 8 laps, and that wouldn't be enough time. So it's looking like, providing that Sokolov keeps it on the road, it looks like it's going to be a 3rd race victory of the season for the Croatian. You know, he won it round 3, he won it round 5. He was unbelievable at the Nordschleife. He had 7th place 2 weeks ago. He was 4th last time out at Alton Park. So he's going to have a 3rd victory, it looks like. Danny Zoutenbayer in 2nd place. And this is a man who I enjoyed the moment he showed up in the Nordschleife for round 5 of the season, and he joined a lap down and he still finished 10th. He's now running in 2nd place. Even if Simon Whiting overtakes him, who, by the way, Simon Whiting's had a fabulous race as well, even if Simon re-overtakes him, this is a stunning drive from Zoutenbayer. Really impressive. Daniel Danu's in 4th. Mark Chapman's in 5th place. He's done well as Mark Chapman, recovering from his issues earlier on. Jordan's still in 6th place. That's a really good result for him if he can stay there. Steve Hall, it's night and day difference between Steve in qualifying and Steve in the race. He's been putting a shift on so far today. It's been a good recovery after getting stuck behind Nicola Gradan earlier. He's now in 7th. Stuart Packham's in 8th place. He will extend his lead in the Drivers' Championship because Josip Kosic threw it away earlier on. Miroslav Grasic, it's between him and Danny Zoutenbayer for driver of the day, from 24th to 9th. Really impressive from Balcanero. In the top 10, I said this earlier in the race. Martin van Reenen, one of those drivers, really competent driver, quite quick. Sometimes not quite quick enough to reach that top echelon of drivers, but really solid. He's in 10th place. It's going to be another great result for him if it stays the way it is with 13 minutes and 5 seconds to go. Ardy van Sluis just outside of the top 10. Ross Harris as well. He's been caught by Tony Manley. I suspect there may be a little bit of damage to that Lamborghini. Kosic is closing the gap as well. He could still find himself in 12th place come the end of the race, but he'll be losing 4 points to Stuart Packham if he does get to 12th. Rover Rakatamanga is in 15th. It's Dennis Penders who's got Eden Peckman. Oh, there's a fight side by side down the main straight. We've got Gearman on the inside at turn 1. The two Ferraris give each other a lot of racing room, and then they don't give each other racing room, and the Ferraris go synchronised spinning. Not quite the ballet performance you would have wanted, and oh, that was a bit awkward. I think Richard Gearman was actually trying to brake to let Eden go through then, but that could have been another father of a shunt. So, despite the spinning Ferraris, Dennis Penders will be happy because he doesn't have any pressure behind him now. Those two went off the road. Nicola Gradan is a little bit further back after his 2 penalties that he had for track limits and a stop-go. Rich Jarram is no one sleeping in Tokyo through the Casio chicane there. Nicely held. Has he stalled it? No, he's got it going again. I don't know if the Mie Prefecture has many drifting drivers, but they can have an application from the Mustang today. Linus Littrix sits himself in 21st. It's Joe Warner in 22nd, still doing a good job. John Wells down in 23rd, so he's been in the walls. We don't quite know what's gone on with Wells. And then Scott Clark still circulating, which is what we like to see. But at the moment, closest fight on track is this one. So let's try and get on board with our drivers fighting over 4th place. We'll get there in the end. There we go. Ferrari versus McLaren. It's a battle that has done itself time and time again throughout history, not just in Formula 1 but in GT racing, of course. On the brakes, Chapper's very late, got that a little bit wrong into Spoon. And you can see how easy it is to just lose time with a mistake around Suzuka. It's an old school circuit. It's not plentiful runoffs. It's narrow. It's technical. It's a challenge. It's got soul. It has soul, this track. And a little bit wide in the Ferrari does Chappers. Shouldn't be a problem for him though. You can run wide, providing you back off a little bit. You won't get a warning for that. But he's been looking at the back of the Spaniard quite a long time now. But Chapman still leads the way. Dennis Penders is still in 16th at the moment. Eden Peckman's back in front, of course, of his spinning duet. Oh, Linus Littrix off the road. And that's the second time Linus has gone off today. Eden under pressure here from Richard Gearman. The Dutchman making his first appearance this season. And he lets him go. Well, Eden Peckman clearly feeling the need to let the Dutch driver past him. So that's the end of that fight for now. Sokolov coming up to the back of lapping them. And Sokolov 5 seconds clear of Danny Zoutenbayer with less than 9 minutes remaining in this race. Peckman goes off the road again. I wonder if Peckman's got a little bit more damage on the car from that incident that he just had with Gearman. We'll have to find out later on. But P1 for Sokolov, Croatian, on his way to a 3rd race win so far in this championship. There's the Italian, Tony Manley. Linus Littrix has not moved from his station. Don't know if he's got any major problems. To say something about Danny Zoutenbayer at the moment, he's really pulled away from Simon. I'm just wondering whether Simon didn't make any changes for tyres. I wonder if he's just carried on. And if that is the case, and Zoutenbayer decided to put a new fresh set of boots on, then that's certainly going to help with the difference. Yeah, 2 minute 3.4 from Simon, so he's 2 seconds slower. I think he's definitely running some old tyres. They are going to be pretty second hand at this stage in the race. Mikey's commented to say, I'd love to get into this, haven't got the talents to match it, nor a wheel, because you really can't do this game without a wheel. It's definitely a detriment to you, put it that way. Maybe in the future though, it'd be good to see you in the championship. Linus Littrix has got going again, but I wonder if he's planted the wall, because he's not circulating at all quickly. There's Scott Clark. Scott needs to move out of the way. He does. That was a bit of a hesitation for the Spaniard, but Danu navigates that relatively okay. Ross Harris down to 13th now, so that Lamborghini certainly did have damage, and I think he'll be cursing Hardy Van Sloot, to be honest. He won't be pleased about it. Rich Jarram still out there. Jordan Harding on his own, having a nice lonely race. I don't think he'll mind if he finishes in 6th. He'll be gaining points on the championship leader, which is Stuart Packham. Not many, only 2, but every point counts. And yeah, I did say Linus had hit the wall. There you go, the BMW. Oh, that was awkward. Fortunately, Jordan saw it coming, and that is a drive-through penalty for Martin van Reenen. Oh no, a disaster. I praised him before. I just said, you know, he's the type of driver who is really consistent and doesn't have any issues, and then Martin goes and does that. Oh, such a shame for the Dutchman. He's going to have to go to the pits. He's going to lose quite a bit of time, actually. Yeah, Linus has got some really big damage on that car. Let's just have a look at where Van Reenen is at the moment. So he'll lose a spot to Ardy Van Sloot, who's all over the back of him. Definitely lose it to this group. I think Van Reenen's probably going to end up 15th. He'd be lucky if he stays out in front of Rakatamanga. So let's see how that goes whenever he does decide to serve it. He's going to get overtaken by... Well, he was nearly going to get overtaken by Ardy Van Sloot, but not quite. He's going to run wide at 130R. The Ferrari on the brakes. I mean, Van Sloot doesn't really have to worry about overtaking the BMW because it's going to get out of his way, and it's going to do it now. Very close to the back of the rear bumper of Martin was Van Sloot there, but he gets away with that and he gets the car stopped, so no additional penalty for the BMW. We've got nearly 5 minutes to go here at Suzuka, and Chapman has dropped off the back of Danu now, and I think Simon Whiting will be happy that the race is ending in 5 minutes time because he's getting his gap closed down by Danu, but he should be okay. I did say Martin van Reenen would end up in 15th place, and ladies and gentlemen, if you put a bet on that, you're welcome. Have a drink on me. Just cycling through the order to see the closest fight on circuit. I mean, realistically now, the drivers are a little bit spread out. Just looking, Zoutenbayer's gap to Whiting. It's come down a little, but not by much. What about Danu? Yeah, Danu's really closing the gap to Whiting. So the McLaren, the number 19 McLaren's tyres are absolutely falling off the cliff here. Let's just see what the next time split... Actually, I'll tell you what would be a better idea. We go into our timetables. You can see that on the last lap, Simon Whiting's best time, or last lap he did, 2 minute 2.2. That's what his lap time was. We look at Danu's on the last few laps. Yeah, comfortably quicker actually on the last few laps. This lap is only 1/10 faster that we've just done. But the Spaniard, very consistent since he's had his pit stop. Linus in the pits, he probably will finish last today. Stuart Packham is closing the gap down to Steve Hall, but he's going to run out of time, I think. The gap is 2.7 seconds, and we've only got 3 minutes to go. So this lap and the next lap for Packham to see if he can make any inroads on the Ferrari, but it's going to be hard. Kosic is going to drop 5 points in the championship, and he'll be kicking himself with that mistake. It was all opening up for him for the championship fight going into round 9 at Red Bull Ring, but that mistake is really going to give him a big blow for the remainder of this championship. Danny Zoutenbayer now losing more time to Sokolov, but he won't care a bit. He's in second place, he's lapping at a decent speed. Mark Chapman and Daniel Danu are actually lapping quicker than him at this point, but he's got such an advantage to those cars behind that with this late stage in the race, it's not going to make a jot of difference But just showing you the difference between fresh new tyres. Ooh, Eden Peckman, that's a bit awkward. He did his best, to be fair, but that was very awkward from him. But these two have been the closest fight for the last few laps, and they are now going on to their last, well, effectively their last few laps now. Sokolov at the moment, that's a car off the road further up. I think Joe Warner's gone off the road at the S's, but he's back on track now. Yeah, and sure enough, you can see the Froggles name tag just appearing in front of us. Lost a lot of time, did Joe there. Well, as I was saying, these two have been the closest fight on track for the last few laps. They've been very close together at points in this race, but not quite close enough for an overtaking manoeuvre. As they run into Degner 1 and then Degner 2. So Sokolov will be going on to his last lap in a few moments' time. He's just approaching Spoon Curve, is Sokolov at the moment. He might get another lap out of this.